Hello all and welcome to Really Dicey. Today we're going to review Harlem Unbound, the newest source book for Call of Cthulhu from Chaosium Games. So Emmanuel's going to start us off and stay to the end when he'll give his sanity rating for the game.
Harlem Unbound is an amazing 300-page plus Call of Cthulhu source book from publisher Chaosium. It is being re-released this year in an updated, expanded edition, and is written by three-time award-winning writer Chris Spivey. Forgive me if I pronounce your last name wrong. This sourcebook gives you the material you need to run a Call of Cthulhu horror game during the Harlem Renaissance in 1920s America. The first 100 pages gives you extensive information about the time period and setting, from the Native Americans that resided here before Europeans arrived, to the creation of New Amsterdam, to the formation of New York City, with sprinklings of how cults have always lurked in the shadows of Manhattan. The second 200 pages are a collection of horror-themed adventures for game masters or keepers to run for their players or investigators. When it comes to the background information of 1920s Harlem, the sourcebook gives you descriptions of what local politics of this era looked like, how businesses and veterans were affected after World War I, and how gangster activities flourished during the time of Prohibition. You get quick lessons to what the music was like in that era, what kind of publications existed, what the surrounding neighborhoods like Little Italy were like, the new styles of fashion and poetry, and much more. This book gives you profiles of some of the most famous and infamous people that era produced, as well as real-life events that brought tension to the city. This book does not shy away from the racism of the era. If you are playing a character in Harlem, most likely you will be playing a black character. And for those of you that may feel uncomfortable with that for whatever reason, the book helps you with role-playing tips. There are also new skills, occupations, and background options to fit your character perfectly for this setting. I'm a fan of the Cthulhu's mythos, and I am tired of the same New England setting. I grew up in New York City, and as wonderful as many forms of media paint the city to be, it can be a horrible place where you may be running for your life from drug dealers, poverty, hunger, crooked cops, and faulty systems of power. What excites me about this book, and why I want to play this with my role-playing groups, is that now I have a setting that I can relate to, and with Cthulhu in the mix, the stakes just got higher. Plus, the Harlem Renaissance is a great era to explore. If you love horror in all manner of forms, or just a fan of good source books for playing Call of Cthulhu, there's no better source book to have in your collection than Harlem Unbound.
I looked at some of their scenarios. There were a lot of them. There were 7 scenarios in this book, including that's in addition to seeds and ideas for you to make your own scenarios. And each one of them was really, detailed and well thought out. That they were up to Chaosium's usual standards. Lots of NPCs and handouts. There were 30 pages of handouts after the scenarios. But I got to say, these scenarios cover a wide range of topics, all of which are pretty disturbing. Not only sort of disturbing in the way that Call of Cthulhu is disturbing, but also kind of disturbing, dealing with the disturbing issues of racism and that aspect of the game. So the scenario system leads out with the Harlem Hellfighters, which deals with the lingering effects of World War I. So you've got a lot of World War I soldiers come back to Harlem, and the war follows them, and you've got an intriguing story about some alien technology and some things going on there. There's an episode about jazz called the Jazz Craze. I thought this one was very interesting because a desperate musician makes a deal, like a Faustian bargain, with some pieces of the mythos that turns some of his music really into exactly the sort of thing that the harshest critics of jazz said that jazz was. It turns it into a degenerate art. So I thought that was a really brave and interesting choice. And so it's the it's the horror that this piece of cursed music, kind of fosters, and it is horrible. It can really mess up your player characters. It's harsh. Yeah. Then there's The Contender, a love story, which is a story about a boxer with some sort of tainted blood. So that really adds a lot of tension and horrific themes to the game. There's one of my personal favorite was Dreams and Broken Wings. So it's all kind of about the dreamlands and art and literally stealing dreams from people. That was a lot of fun. That was an interesting scenario. There was Ode for the Lost, which is another Dreamland game. This one featuring some famous historical figures, and this is my cat. Yes. So Ode for the Lost is another scenario which touches on the Dreamlands. This one featuring some famous historical figures, and incorporating the poetry of Langston Hughes. There was Whispers of Harlem, which kind of a race to find a mythos tome to counteract a terrible curse. These adventures all touch on very familiar pieces of the mythos. I'm deliberately not telling you which pieces of the mythos, but and one of the most interesting ones, the last scenario in the book was called Your Name in the Book, which actually takes place in 1680. So we're going back in time. And this is about a community that's torn apart by the Black Man, which of course is an avatar of Nyarlathotep, and his book that he's trying to get people to sign. This kind of splits the community in half. So this is all about Puritanism and the war between the British and the Dutch, and you got cults, and you've got all sorts of. This one really spins out of control, and you see touches on a lot of stuff. This one comes with pre-generated investigators as well, so which is really helpful, because since they're all 17th century, it might be a little trickier to come up with investigators. You need special rules to put them together. So all of the adventures were really well written. They're all very intriguing. They're all very disturbing and Call of Cthulhu-ish. And then the book just has several appendixes. You've got more NPCs, and you've got monsters, and lots and lots of tools that the keeper would need to run these scenarios. So another quality piece of work by Chaosium, and another fascinating setting to take your game to new and different places. So,
If you love city horror, if you love want to play something during the times of that era, and of course Cthulhu, you want to do with the other gods. This is the perfect book. I love this book more than the Berlin book that we reviewed before. Even though I love that book was great in itself. Yeah, this book, but again, it being a New Yorker, it's great. I could use this game for my friends that are living in the city. For those that may never been to Massachusetts or may not care if the role play in that scenario, this is a scenario that may be more interested in.
Okay.
So yes, sanity rules. Do they go up to 18? I'm not sure.
They're actually 1 to 100. So why do you just stick to the? What do you give it a wisdom score?
Okay. All right. So I will give this a wisdom score of 18. This is, to me, a must have in my collection. It's gonna stay there forever.
Okay. Wow. There you go. All right. Check it out. All right. Thanks for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.